All right, while that's going live, let's go back into the Zoom window here. Okay, now we're going to be doing, let me just make sure there's not other people trying to get in. No, okay. Because I know I got to admit people. All right, we're live. We're live, everyone. We're the Wakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Assembly. Today we're going to be continuing our Sabbath Haftarah readings, and right now we're going to be doing the Torah portion, the Torah part of it, and I will be reading for you guys Genesis 37 to 40. So here we go. I'm going to be using my, as always, I use my Lexham English Septuagint that when it's not the Sabbath, you can go on Amazon and find for yourself for not that bad of a price. Okay. All right. Let's see here. So Genesis 37. Here we go. And here we go. Jacob settled in the land where his father dwelt, in the land of Canaan. These are the genealogies of Jacob, or Jacob. Joseph was 17 years old when he was shepherding the sheep with his brothers, with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, the wives of his father. And Joseph brought down a bad report to Yasharal, their father. Jacob loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was a son of his old age. He made him a many-colored tunic, and his brothers, seeing that his father loved him more than all his sons, hated him, and were not able to speak anything peaceable to him. Having dreamed a dream, Joseph reported it to his brothers, and he said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. I was imagining you were tying together sheaves in the midst of the plain. My sheaf arose and stood upright. Turning around, your sheaves bowed to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Reigning, will you reign over us? Or mastering, will you master over us?" And they proceeded to hate him further on account of his dreams and account of his words. He saw another dream, and he has described it to his father and his brothers, and he said, "Look, I have dreamed another dream, as though the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing to me." And his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream which you have dreamed? Really, then, will I and your mother and your brothers come to bow to the earth to you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father preserved the word, so kept the word in his heart. His brothers went to feed the sheep of their father at Shechem, and Yasharal said to Joseph, "Are your brothers not herding in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." He said to him, "It is I," Yasharal said to him. "Having gone, see if your brothers and the sheep are well, and bring back a report for me." Oh, to me, my bad. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. And a person found him wandering in the plain, and the person asked him, saying, "What are you seeking?" He said, "I am seeking my brothers. Tell me where they are grazing." The person said to him, "They left in that direction, for I heard them saying, 'Let us go toward Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them toward Dothan, and they caught sight of him from afar before he came near to them, and went to kill them. They each said to his brother, "Look, that dreamer is coming. So now come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we will say an evil beast devoured him, and we will see what his dreams are." Okay. Upon hearing it, Reuben rescued him, and we will see what his dreams are. Upon hearing, I'm sorry about that. Sorry for redundantly reading the same line there. Uh, Upon hearing it, Reuben rescued him from their hands and said, "We will not strike him to take his life." Reuben said to him, "Do not shed blood. Rather, throw him into one of these pits in the wilderness. Do not lay a hand upon him, This way he might deliver him from their hands and restore him to his father. It happened when Joseph came to his brothers, they took the many-colored tunic that was around him off Joseph. And taking him, they threw him into the pit, but that cistern did not contain water. They sat down to eat their food, and looking up with their eyes, they saw and looked. Ishmaelite travelers were coming from Gilead, and their camels were laden with spices and resin and myrrh oil. They were walking, leading them down to Egypt. Yehuda said, okay, so Yehuda said to his brothers, we're at Genesis 37:26 here. Yehuda said to his brothers, what gain is there if we kill our brother and keep his blood secret? So, Judah, who later on Judas would come from Judah. He's not really caring about Joseph. He's more or less trying to make money off of him. Sound familiar? Come, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites, but let our hands not be upon him, because he is our brother and our flesh. So his brothers listened, and Midianite merchant people were passing by, so they dragged Joseph out and took him up from the cistern. And they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 gold pieces, and they led Joseph down to Egypt. Reuben returned to the cistern and did not see Joseph in the cistern. And he tore his garments, and he returned to his brothers and said, the young man is not there. And as for me, what shall I do now? Taking the tunic of Joseph, they slaughtered a kid of the goats and stained the tunic with blood. And they sent off the many-colored tunic, and they brought it into their father and said, we found this. Check if it is the tunic of your son or not. And he checked it and said, it is the tunic of my son. An evil beast devoured him. A beast carried off Joseph. Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth around his waist. And he was mourning his son for some days. All his sons and daughters gathered together and came to comfort him. And he did not did not will to be comforted, saying, I will go down to my son mourning into Sheol or Hades. Okay, it's not the lake of fire. It's talking about going to the grave. And his father mourned him. The Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, the eunuch of Pharaoh, the chief cook. Interesting. Okay. Chapter 38, Yehuda and Tamar. It happened that time that Yehuda came down from his brothers and arrived at a certain Adulamite person, whose name was Hira. And there Yehuda saw a daughter of a Canaanite person. Here we go again. Why you guys can't stay away from these Canaanite women? Don't understand. Whose name was Shua, and he took her and entered into her. And when she had conceived, she bore a son and called his name And when she had conceived, yet again she bore a son and called his name Onan, and proceeded further. She bore a son and called his name Shelah, or Shelah. She was in Chezib when she bore them. And Yehuda took a woman for his firstborn son, whose name was Tamar. The firstborn of Yehuda, became evil before Yehuda, and Alua killed him. Yehuda said to Onan, enter into the wife of your brother and marry her, and raise up seed for your brother. Now Onan knew that the seed would not be his. It happened whenever he entered into the wife of his brother, he would spill on the earth in order not to give his brother seed. The word appeared evil in the sight of Alua because he did this, so he killed this one also. Yehuda said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in the house of your father until Shelah, my son, becomes full grown. For he said, in case this one should die also like his brothers. Having departed, Tamar settled in the house of her father. Okay, so notice how since she's not able to get married, she goes back to the house of her father. Okay. So, all right. So she went to the house of her father. Verse 12. The days increased, and Shua, the wife of Yehuda, died. And being comforted, Yehuda went up to those who were shearing his sheep, he and Hira, his shepherd, the Adulamite, toward Timnah. And it was reported to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, saying, Look, your father-in-law went up to Timnah to shear his sheep, and removing the garments of widowhood from herself, she put on a summer garment and adorned herself and sat down at the gates of Enon, which is on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah, his son, had become full grown, but he did not give her to him as a wife. And having seen her, Yehuda thought she was a prostitute, for she covered up her face, and he did not recognize her. He diverted his way toward her and said to her, Allow me to enter into you, for he did not recognize that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, What will you give to me if you enter into me? He said, I am sending you a kid goat from the flocks. She said, If you give a pledge until you send it. He said, What pledge shall I give you? She said, Your ring and your necklace and staff that is in your hand. And he gave them to her and entered into her, and she became pregnant by him. And arising, she departed and took off the light summer garment from herself, and she put on garments of her widowhood. Judah sent the young goat from the goats by the hand of his Adulamite shepherd to receive the pledge from the woman, and he did not find her. He asked the men who were in the place, Where is the prostitute who was at Enon by the road? And they said, There was no prostitute here. So he returned to Yehuda and said, I did not find her, and the people who are from the place say that there was no prostitute here. Yehuda said, Let her have them, but let us not be laughed at. I have sent this kid, but you have not found her. It happened after 3 months. It was reported to Yehuda by people saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has prostituted, and look, she is pregnant from prostitution. Yehuda said, Take her out and let her be burned. While she was being taken, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am pregnant by the person whose things these are. And she said, Find out whose are the ring and the small necklace and the staff. Judah recognized them and said, Tamar is in the right and not I, because I did not give her Shelah, my son. And he did not proceed to know her further. It happened when she gave birth that there were twins in her womb. It happened while she was giving birth. The first one put forth his hand, taking it, and the midwife tied on his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This one will come out first. And when he brought in his hand, then at once, so we're at the end of chapter 38 here. Actually, to be specific, we're at 38 verse 29. When he brought in his hand, and then at once his brother came out, she said, Why was a fence cut through you? So she called his name Perez, and after this, his brother came out, upon whom the scarlet thread was on his hand. She called his name Zerah. All right, so we previously read Genesis 37, 38. Continuing on here, Genesis 39, Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Now Joseph was led down to Egypt, and Potiphar, the eunuch of Pharaoh, an Egyptian man who was the chief cook, acquired him from the hands of the Ishmaelites, who led him down there. And Yahuwah was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he came into the house beside the Egyptian master. His master knew that Yahuwah was with him, and whatever he did, Yahuwah was making him prosperous in his hands. And Joseph found favor before his master. He was pleasing to him, and he placed him over his house, and all the things that were in his, he gave them through the hand of Joseph. It happened after he was placed over his house and over all the things that were his, and Yahuwah broke the house of the Egyptian because of Joseph. And the baraka of Yahuwah came upon all the things that belonged to him in the house and in the field. And he entrusted all things that were his in the hands of Joseph. And he did not concern himself with a single thing belonging to him, except the food that he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in appearance, very beautiful in outward appearance. Okay. And this happened after these words, and the wife of his master cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Sleep with me." And he did not want to, but he said to the wife of his master, "If my master does not know anything about anything in his house because of me, and all the things that are his, he gave into my hands. And no one in his house surpasses me. And there was nothing removed from me, anything except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do this evil thing and sin before Alua?" When she was speaking to Joseph day after day, and he was not listening to her to sleep with her and be with her, it happened that on a certain such day, Joseph came into the house to do his tasks, and no one was inside the house, and she pulled him by his garments, saying, "Sleep with me." And leaving behind his garments, he fled and went outside. And this happened when she saw that he left behind his garments in her hands and fled and went outside. Then she called those who were in the house and spoke to them, saying, "Look, he brought a Hebrew servant among us to mock us. He came to me saying, 'Sleep with me,' and I cried with a loud voice. When he heard that, I raised my voice and I cried aloud, leaving his garments with me. He fled and went outside, and she left the garments beside herself until the master came into his house. And she spoke with him according to these words, saying, 'The Hebrew servant whom you brought into us came in to me to mock me and said to me, Sleep with me.' When he heard that, I raised my voice and I cried out. He left his garments with me and fled and went outside." It happened when the master heard the words of his wife, everything she spoke to him, saying, "Your servant dealt with me like this." Then he was inflamed with anger, and Joseph's master took him and threw him into the prison, into the place in which the prisoners of the king were held there in the prison. And Yahuwah was with Joseph and poured mercy over him and gave him favor before the chief prison guard. And the chief prison guard gave the prison into the hand of Joseph and all the ones who had been imprisoned, as many as were in the prison, and all the things that they were doing there. The chief prison guard did not have knowledge of anything because of him, for everything was in the hand of Joseph, because Yahuwah was with him, and Yahuwah made everything he was doing prosperous in his hands. All right. Chapter 40 of Genesis. This will be our last chapter for our Torah portion for today. So here we go. Chapter 40. Joseph interprets dreams in prison. It happened after these words, the chief cupbearer of the king of Egypt and the chief baker offended their master, the king of Egypt, and Pharaoh was angry at his two eunuchs, at the chief cupbearer and at the chief baker. And he put them under guard near the chief jailer in the jail, in the place where Joseph had been imprisoned there. And the chief prison guard placed them under Joseph, and he was placed with them. And they were under guard for days, and they both saw a dream. The chief cupbearer and the chief baker, they who belonged to the king of Egypt, those who were in jail, both of them saw the vision of his dream in a single night. Joseph entered to them in the morning and saw them, and they were troubled. And he questioned the eunuchs of Pharaoh who were with him in keeping beside his masters, saying, "Why is it that your faces are sad today?" And they said to him, "We have seen a dream, and there is no one to interpret it." Then Joseph said to them, "Is not their interpretation through Alua? Like, aren't interpretations of dreams from the Father? Therefore, describe them to me." And the chief cupbearer described his dream to Joseph and said, "In my sleep there was a vine before me. On the vine were 3 stems. It was sprouting, bearing shoots. The clusters of grapes were ripe, and the cup of Pharaoh was in my hand. And I took the bunch of grapes and squeezed it into the cup, and I gave the cup into the hand of Pharaoh. And Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 stems are 3 days. 3 days further, and Pharaoh will remember your office and will restore you to your office of chief cupbearer. And you will give the cup of Pharaoh into his hand according to your former office when you were cupbearer. But mention me through yourself when it becomes well with you, and you will show mercy to me, and you will mention to Pharaoh regarding me, and you will lead me out of his fortress, because I was stolen by theft from the land of the Hebrews, and I did not do anything here, but they threw me into this cistern." And the chief cupbearer saw that he interpreted rightly, and he said to Joseph, "I also saw a dream, and I imagined I was carrying 3 baskets of coarse grain, cakes on my head. In the baskets that was on top were were some of all the fruit that the king Pharaoh eats, the work of a baker, and the birds of the heavens were devouring them from the basket that was on top of my head." Answering, Joseph said to them, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. 3 days further, Pharaoh will take your head away from you and will hang you on the gallows. And the birds of the heavens will eat your flesh off you." It happened on the 3rd day. It was the birthday of Pharaoh, and he was having a drinking party for all his servants. Oh, nothing new under the sun there. And he remembered the office of the chief cupbearer and the office of the chief baker in the midst of his servants. And he reestablished the chief cupbearer to his office, and he placed the cup into the hand of Pharaoh. But the chief baker he hung, just as Joseph interpreted to them. But the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but he forgot him. So that's the end of our Torah portion for today of our half Torah readings. So I guess what we can do right now is backtrack and see if anything really stood out to us. So let's see here. I know I had some notes from before. So let's see here. Nothing too out of the ordinary for the chapter with Tamar and Judah. That was pretty much substandard in 37. Self-explanatory there. Let's see here. And probably I would assert why Yahuwah was mad at one of his sons for not giving seed for their dead brother would be later on in the law of Moses. There's a command that that's your responsibility. If you live in the same house as your brother, you are to raise up seed to your dead brother's wife. So that's pretty self-explanatory why Yahuwah was mad at Onan. Let's see here. So that was 37. Let's see, 38. I'm just trying to remember if there's anything that really stood out in 38. Okay, so, let's see. Oh, my bad. 37 was not that. My bad. I'm sorry. Let me apologize. No, 38 was Judah and Tamar. I got that confused for some reason. Okay. No, 37 was Joseph being sold away and Joseph's dream that he gives to his father and his brothers. There is something interesting I remember seeing in the Targum about the dreams and about why he gave a ill report when he first came back from the field earlier in the chapter. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, here we go. Targum of Jonathan, chapter 37, verse 2 says this. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph was a son of 17 years. He had come from this is a very modern term here, from the school and was a youth brought up with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought their evil report, for he had seen them eat flesh that had been torn by wild beasts. The ears and the tails he came and told it to his father. So it seems like there might be a reason why he told an ill report of his brothers. That they were actually doing something later on would be a commandment in the Torah, the law of Moses, not to do such things, not to eat things that are torn by beasts and such, you know. So I found that pretty interesting. Let's see here. Are you to reign over us? No, it's pretty much substandard. The rest of this chapter, trying to think. The only other interesting thing really about 37 to note from the Targum of Jonathan is that supposedly the man that told him where his brothers were was Gabriel. Gabriel was in the form of a man. Genesis 37:15. And Gabriel in the likeness of a man found him wandering in the field, and a man asked him, saying, "What do you seek?" He said, "I seek my brothers." You know the story there. And then let's see. For I heard. What's interesting in verse 17, though, it says that they fled because of the Hivites. And if we remember the chapter prior to 37, what they did to that Hivite that wanted to marry their sister. You know? So it kind of makes sense. They have journeying here, for I heard beyond the veil that, behold, from today would begin the servitude to the Mitzrites. It was said to them in prophecy, Hivites would seek to set battle in array against them. Therefore, they said, we will go unto Dothan. So it seems like there's this concept of the Hivites chasing after them, wanting to battle with them because of what they did to the Hivites, you know, the chapter prior. Now, about the whole servitude to the Mitzrites, I'm trying to figure out what that means, because obviously we know historically, chronologically from the scriptures, that's not true. Maybe that's referring to Joseph going into Egypt. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're referring to, the servitude in Egypt starting. Maybe. Anyway, so I just found that little portion of the Targum of Jonathan interesting. Trying to see if there's anything else we could go to some notes for 38, because I don't see anything really too out of the ordinary. And actually 38, like I said before, there's nothing really to expound upon with the Tamar and Judah chapter. Let me see here. There's a lot in 39 though. So let's see here. We got 39 verse 2. So this is referring to when now he's in Potiphar's house. Okay, so Genesis 39:2, in the Targum of Jonathan, it says, the word of Yahuwah was Joseph's helper, and he became a prosperous man in the house of the Mitzrayim master. So I find it interesting that it says the word of Yahuwah there was his helper, or you could say his savior. Okay. Then verse 3 again mentions the word of Yahuwah, and his master saw that the word of Yahuwah was his helper, and that Yahuwah prospered in his hand all that he did. Okay, so verses 2 to 3 there seem to be pretty important there for that chapter. Let's see here. Verse 21. And the word of Yahuwah was Joseph's helper, and extended mercy to him, gave him favor in the eyes of the captain of the prison. Okay, and then one last time in 39, it says, it was not, so this is the last verse of chapter 39 here. It was not needful for the captain of the prison to watch Joseph after the custom of all the prisoners, because he saw that there was no fault in his hands. For the word of Yahuwah was his helper, and that which he did, Yahuwah made it to prosper. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory there. Let's see here. So, and so obviously we learn a big lesson from Joseph here with Potiphar's wife. Us men to flee from sexual immorality. I'm pretty sure we've all been raised with that. Yeah. Uh, I will say this: the Targums are scripture; they're not apocrypha. I mean, this is Genesis to Deuteronomy. This is like, I do want to make a distinction here, guys. People that think this is apocrypha, this is not apocrypha. There's Yemenite Jewish communities that read this as their Torah. So I'm just saying. There's some sects in Judaism that actually would consider this their scriptures, like actual canonical scriptures. So I'm just saying. I think we need to define what is actually apocrypha and what's not. So just saying. So that's the only reason I'm mentioning this, because this is scripture. This is Genesis to Deuteronomy. So that's the reason I'm including it as a Torah portion, just to clarify. So anyway, so anyway, there's not much to really include with Genesis 39. We all know about Joseph's story there. Let's see here. Butlers. Pharaoh's angry. Okay, so Pharaoh's angry. Trying to see if there was anything to add about Genesis 40. In prison. Okay, so nothing else. I think we can move on. And since it was such a short portion for the Genesis part, I think we will move on. And since it's such a short prophet portion, I think I'll do the prophet portion too of Amos. So we're going to go to Amos chapter 2, verse 6 to 3, verse 8. It's like literally one chapter. So I'll read that before going to another reader. Let's see here. So let me just give me time, guys. I'm going to find the book of Amos. So Amos, 1005. 1005. All right. So, let me see here. So here we go. Amos chapter 2, continuing on, everyone. All right. So, judgment on Moab. This is what Yahuwah says, and I'm reading from the Lexham English Septuagint. Okay. For 3 impious acts of Moab, and 4 I will not turn away from him, because they burn to dust the bones of the king of Moab. So I will send fire against Moab. It will devour the foundations of its cities, and Moab will die by inability. With shouting and with sound of trumpet, I will utterly destroy the judge from it, and I will kill all of its people with him, says Yahuwah. This is what Yahuwah says, judgment on Yehuda. For 3 irreverent acts of the sons of Yehuda, and for 4, I will not turn away from him, because they pushed away the law of Yahuwah, and they did not keep his ordinances, and their vain things which they did, and their ancestors followed after them, deceived them. So will I send fire against Yehuda, and it will devour the foundations of Jerusalem. This is what Yahuwah says. For 3 irreverent acts of Yasharal, and for 4, I will not turn away from him, because they sold a righteous man for silver, and a poor man for the sake of sandals, which walk on the dust of the earth, and used to punch at the head of the poor, and perverted the way of the low. And a son and his father used to go into the same young woman, in order that they might profane the name of their Alua. And while binding with cords their clothes, they used to make curtains that cling to the altar, and drink wine from extortion, and in the house of their mighty one. But I will lift up the Amorites from their face, whose height was just as the height of a cedar. And he was mighty like an oak, and I dried his fruit from above and his roots from below. And I led you up from the land of Egypt, and I led you about in the wilderness 40 years, so that you might inherit the land of the Amorites. And I have taken some from your sons for prophets, and some from your young men from consecration. Are these things not so, sons of Yasharel, says Yahuwah? And you used to give those who were set apart wine, and would command the prophets, saying, do not prophesy on account of this. Look, I am rolling under you the way the wagon that is full of straw being rolled along, excuse me, and flight will vanish from a runner, and the mighty man will not get possession of his strength, and the fighter will not save his life, and the bowman will not stand his ground, and the one who is quick with his feet shall not be saved, nor shall the horseman save his life, and the strong shall not find his heart in the axe of power. The person will pursue on that day, says Yahuwah. Hear this word that Yahuwah has spoken against you, O house of Yasharel, and concerning the whole tribe that I led up out of the land of Egypt, saying, but I knew you out of all the tribes of the earth, and on account of this I will avenge you upon you all your sins. Will two walk together at all if they are not acquainted with themselves? Will a lion roar from his thicket when it does not have prey? Will a cub give its growl from its den at all, if it did not see something? Will a bird fall upon the ground with a bird catcher? Will a trap spring up in the land without capturing anything? Will a war trumpet sound in a city and the people not be terrified? Will there be wickedness in a city which Yahuwah did not bring to pass? Interesting. Because Yahuwah Alua will not render a deed if he has not revealed instruction to his servants, the prophets. A lion will roar, and who will not be afraid? Yahuwah Alua has spoken, and who will not prophesy? So basically, we can take away from that analogy there, in the last 8 verses of chapter 3 of Amos. Whatever Yahuwah speaks will come to pass. Yahuwah does not do anything in vain. And we see the judgment of Moab here, and then it goes into the judgment of Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, how they forsook his Torah, how they walked in their own ways, even after he redeemed them out of Egypt, all of his people out of Egypt, not just Judah, but how he even cut off the Amorite for them and removed all these tribes from them to give them the inheritance he promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah. Yep, that's about it. So, unless anyone has anything to add, we can stop a recording and start another one, and we'll go to another reader. But I'm going to give time for any brothers and sisters that want to add anything they might have gotten from Amos or anything else before we move on. If not, let me just make sure I didn't rush too much through it. It's just that it was pretty much self-standard when I was reading it. I didn't get really too much different from what Yahuwah warns through the prophets. And about repenting from sin, about his judgment coming, his wrath coming to those that their sin has reached the full. Okay. All right. All right, we're gonna stop this recording here, and we'll start a new one. So please stay tuned, everyone. We will be doing 1 Samuel 26 to 31 next. So please stay tuned. Stop live stream.